As Terry has mentioned, my name is Fabiola, but at home they call me Maria Fabiola Alvarado Colmenares. I was born in Australia, in Melbourne. My dad was studying here. My family lived here for 2 years, and 5 months after I was born, we went back to Venezuela, where I grew up. Venezuela was the only home I knew. And Venezuela is the place where my family was. I am one of 6 children. My dad is one of 22. My mom is one of 9. And last time I count, I have 64 first cousins. That's not to mention our kids now. So, I grew up in a place that is surrounded by mountains. It's a beautiful place. And there are so many things to do in that place. That place is called Merida. Merida is known in Latin America as the sport capital, the adventure sports capital of South America. You might say equivalent to New Zealand. In such a small place, you can do rafting, canyoning, rock climbing. You can do paragliding. We have very high mountains over there. It's a beautiful place. Every year, people from all over the world came to this place to enjoy themselves. I grew up in a place, Merida is also known in Venezuela as the place for people with good manners. I don't know why, but apparently people are very, very polite in Merida. And Merida also has a university that is the main thing in town. So think about Oxford, if you like. Everybody's related to the university in one way or another. So for example, at home my dad was university professor, and out of the 6 children, 4 of us went to that university. My cousins, my friends, in one form or another, we were linked to that university. So it was pretty well known in Venezuela. My dad is a doctor, and he's a man with a lot of a strong sense of social justice. And my mom was a woman that dedicated her life to the community. I suppose that they both in their own right were known for what they did. And then I grew up, and in one way or another, people could identify me or my friend, or my siblings, or my family. When I finished university and I graduated, I moved to Venezuela capital city, Caracas. When I went to Caracas, even though I didn't know many people in Caracas, just saying that I was from Merida, there was a big reference point. So there was an expectation about how were the people from Merida. When I said that I graduated from Los Andes University, there was also an expectation about that. It was your credentials. Maybe nobody knew my mom and dad in the capital city, but just being from that place meant something to people in Venezuela. I myself would describe me as a person with a strong sense of social justice. I did study criminology at university. I think I'm a passionate person, a go-getter. When I focus on a goal, I go and achieve it. Or that's the way I used to think about myself when I was living in Venezuela anyway. I did things that nobody expected from me for a while, and then it was like, well, she can do many things because she has demonstrated that. I felt that I had that fire inside me. I felt many times that I was unstoppable. And most of all, I thought about myself as a very resourceful person. I used to say, I don't know everything, but I might know somebody who knows about that. And if I can find somebody who knows about that, then I will make it up. And I always found a way. My dad recalls his years of living in Australia as one of his best years. And he always talked about Australia as the best thing, his best experience. He kept talking about the Victoria Market, the Great Ocean Road, the quality of the people in here, the friendliness. And every time he introduced me to a new friend, he will say, this is my daughter, my Australia pride. You know, that was a bit funny, but I did grow up with that strong sense of being Australian. And since I was very, very young, my dream was to come to Australia. Living in Venezuela, that's not an easy thing to do. It's very expensive to travel to Australia. So I didn't do it. I graduated from university, I started working professionally. I can say that I had a successful career after graduation for about 3 years, and one day one of my friends says, hey Fabiola, would you like to come with me to the airport? My cousin is moving to the US and we're just going to say goodbye to him. And I said, yes, of course, why not? This was a young man whose most prized possession was a Jeep. And he had a girlfriend who he loved very much as well. And he had made the decision to migrate to the United States of America and sell his car and leave his girlfriend behind, going with a tourist visa, and he didn't know how to speak English. And he was willing to gamble everything. And I stood there and I looked at him and I thought, gee, I wish I could do that. And then it was like a pin drop in my head and I thought, hang on, I can do that. I speak English better than him. I have an Australian passport. I don't have any dependents. I don't have anybody to leave behind. I think I can do this. And just like many other things that I did in my life before that, 1 year later, I was landing here in Melbourne. And you know, my English was so good. And I knew somebody in here, and I thought, you know what? My English is good, and in 6 months I will be fine. I have a degree, I have a work experience, so I don't have any visa problems. I'm going to find a job just easily. I give myself 6 months to brush my English, and I'm going to be fine. There was one person, a friend of the family since the time my parents lived here. He welcomed me. And he said to me one day, "Dear, your English is so good." And I thought, yes, of course I know. "I reckon that in 3 years you will be able to speak English well, and in 5 years you will be able to understand the television." What? And that was his idea of having good English. I did appreciate his thought, but that part of me, that Venezuelan girl that just arrived to Australia, was ready to show him who I was. And I didn't need 3 years to learn English. I was going to do it in 6 months. How dare him? He didn't know me. He didn't know who I was. The one thing I wasn't ready for at that time was the realization that the day I stepped out of that airplane and I set foot in this land, I became nobody. I wasn't the daughter of, the sister of, the person from Merida who graduated in this university. None of those credentials that formed my identity when I was living in Venezuela meant anything in here. Not my degree, not my work experience. Not my resourcefulness. Oh, what is that word?
Resourceful.
Thank you. Being resourceful in Venezuela meant something completely different to being resourceful in Australia. In Venezuela, I didn't have any budget to work with. I have to make magic. In Australia, I have to spend my budget, otherwise they will take it away next year. In Venezuela, I was clever, I was funny, I was witty. In Australia, I didn't have the language to do that. Every time I wanted to say something, I had to think so much that I missed the opportunity. Every time I applied for a job, I got knocked down many, many times, and I didn't know why. And it felt at some point that strong, driven, focused person with a belly full of fire had died. And that I was in the presence of a different person that I didn't know. To me, that was a breaking point. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was good for. I didn't know what was my value. And it was very hard for me to go day by day trying to find that value. Trying to make meaning in this new environment. I was very fortunate to meet somebody in here. We started going out. He is an Australian man. And I was fortunate enough to connect with him and his family. I married this person. We're no longer together. But at that point in time, that was my anchor. That gave me some reference again, I went to university, so slowly I started rebuilding an identity for myself. So if I tell you that I went to Swinburne University, most of you will know what that is. So slowly by slowly, I started creating some of those identities in my life. And there was a transition point in that time. It was a time when I started consolidating myself. I was able to understand the Australian culture, the Australian context. I was able to start getting job interviews, and eventually I got my first professional job. That was 3 years after I arrived in Australia. Not 6 months as I anticipated. After 3 years, I couldn't speak English very well either. And I couldn't understand the television either. And at that point in life, I thought, yeah, he was right. This was harder than what I anticipated. The 6 months that I thought was going to be my transition period became 3 years. And in those 3 years, there's a lot of things that go through your mind. Self-doubt, anxiety, depression, doubting yourself, yes, self-doubt. What am I good for? What am I doing here? Should have I come here? Was this the right decision? Should I go back? But life went on. As I said before, I got married. I established myself here. I got a job. It was fulfilling at a time. So, you start growing, you start realizing that all of those hard times that you had before suddenly add meaning into your life, add strength into your character, add depth into the way that you look at life. And probably most of all, it adds compassion into your soul. During some of those years and after that, later in my marriage, I did experience situation that I would have preferred not to. And what do you do when you feel that things are not going your way? You step back, you retract. You don't want to share those things with your friends. The hard times. You don't feel proud about it. And you hope that one day those things are going to become better. But they didn't. And once again, I found myself in a position where I was totally on my own. This time with a little boy. Without anybody really able to, nobody that I could rely on. I thought if I was at home, if I only was at home, I could just go and stay with my mom. If I stayed with my mom only for a week, probably things will change in here. But I didn't have that luxury. I didn't have that opportunity. I didn't have that possibility. And then work became difficult again. I tried to get a new job. I couldn't get a new job. It was very, very difficult to break into the job market again. So there were so many things that were happening into my life at the time. Unemployed, a broken marriage, lack of family support, uncertainty. I didn't know what to do. But as it happens, finally got a job, and slowly started rebuilding myself again. This is my story. And it's not the hard story that I have heard over there, but it is the story of many other migrant women that come to Australia. Every year, Australia receives 250,000 migrants. A third of that are women. And 60% of those migrants, women are able to find employment, professional employment. 40% of them never do. And many of them get themselves in situations like mine. Lack of support, lack of networks, lack of understanding of what the system is all about. About a year and a half ago, I had the opportunity to attend a conference for local government professionals. And the last speaker of the day, the keynote speaker, was a woman that I was looking forward to meet. So throughout the day we had about 4 different speakers, and all of them they were all women, it was a forum for women only. They looked very white, Anglo-Saxon, Australian, and they were fabulous. They were amazing. But the last speaker was an African woman, a refugee, and she was the keynote speaker. When she came up on stage, something happened to me. I was able to recognize myself into that person. I was able to see that I too had a place in this place. I was able to realize that if she had a voice, I could have a voice. Because she looked different. Because she looked, in a way, like me, or she sounded a little bit like me as well. And that day, something shifted. Something started to change. And I started to see myself in a different light. I started to see that woman with the fire in the belly again. I wanted to be like her. And I knew I could do it because I used to be like that. But I didn't know how to do that. It's been a journey of about 1.5 years since that time. And during this time I have been able to reconnect with myself, to recognize my essence, to feel proud of my accent, for whatever that's worth, to embrace what makes me who I am. To feel proud about the thing that makes me a Latin woman, a part of that culture. Because those are things that people value about myself. And I never acknowledged that. So suppose that, there are some stereotypes about Latin people, about maybe being noisy or liking to party. But one of the things that, people keep telling me is about my spontaneity, my ability to connect at a deeper level with other people and to care for others, my enthusiasm for life. And that's something that is so linked to my culture and to the woman that I used to be. And I feel that has created a rebirth for myself. But I also recognize that there are so many other women out there that right now are stuck in that place where I was 2-3 years ago. And I also recognize that I know how to get out of that place. One of my highest value is connection. So I put it out there, and I said to other women, I put a post on Facebook, and I said, if you are a migrant woman and you want to find a job, let's get together and I can help you. It was one of the most scary things that I've done. Writing that post and then put it on Facebook. And one person responded, and then 2 and 3 and 4. And I wanted commitment from them. I thought, okay, if I'm going to do this, there has to be commitment. So I said, okay, let's get together on this day. I hired the venue. I prepared the program. The first day, 3 people show up. And we didn't know what we were doing. It was just about, okay, what do we need? What do you need that I can give you? That was about 2 months ago. They said to me, my resume is good, my cover letter is good, I just don't get interviews. I don't know how to do interviews. I said, well, that's something I can certainly help with. That's part of what I do right now for my work. And I knew for a fact that one thing they lacked were professional networks. And most of them lack also personal connections. And the one thing they have in common, the threat that is common for all of us, as it turned out, is that at some point in time they also have lost that fire from the belly. We started meeting weekly. I started posting, and people kept coming. And in short few weeks, we've experienced some very meaningful transformation in this group of women. It is as if they found a place where they can be themselves, a place where they can express themselves the way they are, a place where somebody else knows what they're going through, a place where they are appreciated for their own value, And they don't need to make up something that they not really are. And that to me is the greatest joy. To be able to be that bridge, to be able to pass on my experiences and help somebody else. On week 1, out of the 3 women that joined me, they haven't had any interviews. They have been applying for jobs. Some of them have been in the country for 3 years, 2 years. And now they come to the meetings. We practice gratitude. We always said what are we thankful for, and also what am I proud of. Because it's about changing that narrative. It's about changing that story that doesn't belong to us. And it's about realizing that we all have value. The only thing is that we need to translate that into the Australian context. And we need to learn how to do that. That is the Professional Migrant Women Mentoring Group. And we meet every second week. We bring people together, and we bring people that are currently working, men or women, that are willing to share experiences with these women and are willing to add values to their life, to share their contacts, to have a cup of coffee, so they can also grow their networks, they can also grow their contacts, and they can start having those reference points in Australia. To me, Mariam Issa, that African woman that was presenting in that forum, was the person that allowed me to dream bigger, to believe in myself, to give myself a second chance. And I can see that through my story and the story of other women that come together, we are also causing that impact on other people. A few weeks ago, I attended a networking event for migrant women, professional migrant women as well, and one of the panelists in the session said something that resonated with me a lot. And has become the purpose. And she said, what a woman can see, a woman can be. And it's about being role models for other people, and it's about reaching out, and it's about giving people opportunities. My goal now is to close that gap, that 40% gap in unemployment for migrant women. And this is just the beginning. So stay tuned.